That is that systems should exist to increase human connection. And if the systems are existing for the sake of systems, they are in the way and you're doing it wrong. And so that is something that is a part of what we talk about is, are we doing things, are we doing the right things, but also are we doing them for the right reasons? And the right reasons are always about the people using them.
Higher education is under unprecedented pressure. Financial, cultural, competitive. These forces are pushing universities to act like factories, to fill seats, chase numbers, and to survive another year. But the institutions that will thrive are transforming into communities, places where students feel seen, known, and inspired to belong. Factories won't survive. Communities will. Exceptional leaders are building this future right now. Their stories can light the way for others. This is the Factories to Communities transformation, and these are the architects of belonging.
Thank you so much for joining us on Architects of Belonging. As you know, we're super excited to talk with you about how you're building belonging and community at Gettysburg. We're going to explore a few things as well, which is your personal why for being in higher ed and how you're leading through a very transformative but also very challenging time within higher education. But we're going to start off with who you are. Okay. Myself and Lungi, we call this the LinkedIn intro. So I'm going to give an intro on you from the easy part, right? Which is like what we can read on LinkedIn. So you've been in higher ed for a vast majority of your career.
Yes.
And you've had
strong loyalty.
Your whole career. Let me go even further. Your whole career. And you've had strong loyalty to two institutions.
I have.
Susquehanna.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Where you're also an alum, as we know, and Gettysburg, where you're currently at. And specifically within that, you've spent kind of your whole time within this umbrella of admissions and enrollment. But the thing that's unique about you is that you've shifted from kind of like the recruiter side of the desk, and now you're actually more so focusing on the systems and the analytics and all of that can support that team. But that's the easy part to talk about you. So tell us a little bit, like who is Sarah outside of what we can read on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. First of all, I am a lifelong lover of education. And because of that, I'm a lifelong learner. So that's something that I think is really true. Certainly, I think it's probably true of everybody, or hopefully true of everybody, but definitely of me, is that I am a work in progress and I'm never done. And I am entering kind of a final chapter, I think, of my career, right? That I'm really excited about the opportunity to craft a legacy and trying to be really intentional about what I'm doing with that in this time. And I also think that, hopefully I'm not getting too far ahead of the conversation here, but I was thinking a little bit ahead of time about what we're going to talk about. And I think that when I started in higher ed, it was a time of a real cultural shift in what we were doing with enrollment. And by that, I mean, when I first started, it was 1989. We had a big mainframe system. We had index cards and little color coding stickers that we would kind of fold over the top of our index cards. And that was my CRM. And it was the end of the era of gatekeeping. Right. It was just at the end of the time when colleges didn't need to recruit. You just sort of waited and they showed up. And we were moving into a time when it was really important to generate interest and build the top of your funnel. And in all of the ways that now feel very traditional to us, those were new back then. And my work in systems began because we were looking for a way to manage that data that our little homegrown mainframe system didn't do. And so at the time, Susquehanna bought a product called Sequitur Recruitment Plus, which was a little startup that eventually got bought by the College Board and was absolutely the best thing in its time. And now we're at that same sort of inflection point where what we've been doing and what's been working, not we Gettysburg, but we higher ed, what we've been doing for the last 30 years we're starting to see real erosion, that those patterns don't serve institutions in the way that they used to. And so it's really exciting to be a part of kind of that new frontier.
Yeah, love it. And I think you're setting the tone for what's going to be a really exciting conversation and a lot to unpack. You had mentioned that you're entering into this like next chapter of your life a little bit. Is singing by chance one of those parts of your next chapter? Because we had noticed that there's a tradition called blessing of the packets
Oh my
at
goodness. Oh my
Gettysburg.
gosh.
We saw you front and center. Is that like a little insight into what might be coming, or what's
Oh
going on
gosh.
there?
That's really funny, actually. So that was actually something that my former VP, Carrie Thompson, had done at his previous institution, where they kind of spoke words over the admission packets before they went out. And I said, wouldn't it be fun to do a musical version where we kind of rewrite the lyrics to the alma mater? But my co-director, our director of admissions, is a very, very talented vocalist and kind of semi-professional vocalist. And so that's her bailiwick. I don't see myself as a singer, but it was a lovely tradition and one I'm really looking forward to continuing this year. It's part of that
Awesome.
creating a legacy, right? Like, what are the unique moments that you do? And I don't know how many prospective students or actually soon to be admitted applicants saw that video, but
Yeah.
I hope at least a couple of them did, because we took it seriously. We're sending these little orange envelopes out into the world, and we wanted them to land with the spirit that we intended them. So, yeah,
Love that. Love that.
that's such a great question.
Yeah, well, we have one more for the people, just to get to know Sarah. So
Okay.
we know you're quite thoughtful. You write, you give, deep thinker,
Uh-huh.
and we've seen that you like walking on the shores of Delaware. Is that something that people should know? Is that your space to think when you're walking there?
Oh, yeah. So actually, honestly, my thinking space is walking anywhere in the outdoors.
Okay.
Absolutely. That particular stretch of the Delaware Shore, that's my husband and I, that's our favorite vacation spot to go to. But I live in the woods, and so kind of walking through the woods or just walking along the country roads in my neighborhood, same kind of thing. There's something about that combination of the kind of the repetitive motion of your feet hitting the ground and that cadence that it sets, that really, for me, creates thinking space. And I love the fact that there's so many great AI tools now, because my neighbors probably think I'm crazy, but when I walk, I often just talk out loud about whatever particular challenge I'm currently ruminating on. And I have a voice recorder going that has an AI agent attached to it. So then it kind of helps me make sense of my crazy thoughts. So, yeah.
That's incredible. You're a walker and a talker. That's myself and Lungyar as well. Anytime we're on the phone,
Well, of course you
we're
are, because why else would we?
pacing back and forth. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, because you've been thinking a lot, we know that you've thought about this question before, although this is probably, we always kick it off with what is kind of a harder question. So we're going to talk about the why in a challenging era, and in particular your why. So as we've mentioned, colleges are closing. The belief in the value of higher ed is declining. The belief in the ROI is being challenged. That essence of higher ed is being questioned.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit. Like what is your why for working in higher ed that fuels your commitment? You've been doing this for your lifer, as you said. So
Yeah, I am.
what going?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. I think what keeps me going is, I think I touched on it a little bit about the sense of being able to create legacy, but what keeps me excited is that it's about humans in the end. And, I think a lot of people want their work to be meaningful in some way and to have idealistic visions of leaving the world better than they found it. The work I do actually impacts real people's lives. And that's really exciting to me, that I still have that opportunity to have individual students that I've known who I remember sitting down with them when they were high school students and interviewing them and watching who they were then and their journey of transformation through Gettysburg. And then many of them I still stay in touch with, and seeing how their lives are impacting the world for the better. That's sort of being a link in a really long, impactful chain matters to me. As far as what keeps me going right now, I feel like I have more energy now than I probably have my entire career. And I think, my our CIO and I have a kind of a standing monthly meeting of just kind of checking in, like what's going on your side of the street, what are we doing? But one of the things, a theme that he and I return to is that this is such a moment of change in higher ed. And we've just got this very strong awareness that the work that we're doing now is going to set the tone for the next 50 years. And that 50 years from now, Gettysburgians may look back at what we did and say, I'm so glad that they made the choices that they made because they set us off in the right direction. Or they might look back and say, what were they thinking? That was a terrible choice. And now we've been dealing with the fallout of it. And so we're, I think, really aware of that responsibility. I think if you're really doing the work right now and you're not spending at least part of your day terrified and part of your day exhilarated, like you're totally missing the point. You're not doing something right if you're not feeling that energy around what you're able to create. So I think that's my why, is feeling like I have a choice to make here, and the actions that I'm choosing are measurably impacting the world around me.
Yeah. That's powerful. And Sarah, has that evolved? Is that why evolved because of, as you said, the current times that we're in?
Yes, I definitely think that it has evolved because there were years and years and years where there was a set pattern and we kind of had the routine, and maybe you tweaked the schedule of your open house a little bit, but you didn't do a whole lot different from year to year because it was really working. And now we've got all of these factors that are commingling. So we knew about the demographic decline. We've known that was coming. But the things that are enhancing that, I think, is the desire of students in the Northeast. So many of them are looking to the South. And so that demographic decline, which is already disproportionately represented in the Northeast, where my institution happens to be located, we're also seeing that the interest, the geographic interest is shifting. And we're also seeing that of each graduating cohort from high school, fewer of them are choosing higher education. And so those factors all combined, absolutely. We know that, and we can see what's happening at the higher ed landscape, and we can see what's happening nationally. We can see that there are institutions that are closing. And I think that it's really incumbent on institutions to think differently right now, to say, take a deep breath. Our core mission isn't changing. Our core mission of educating an individual is not changing, but the way that's expressed needs to shift, and the way that we share that with the world needs to change, because high school students aren't looking in the way that they used to. And so that's another piece that's part of why I think that why has shifted for me. And I will also say that for me, it just coincided with a point in my career where I took a leadership role where I had the agency to make decisions that have an impact in this way too. So it's kind of the perfect storm, I guess I would say.
Yeah. You had mentioned, you made a comment there about taking like a deep breath and remembering why you're doing what you're doing and continuing on. There's in one of your articles on your Substack, you had quoted your father about acting out of fear would diminish the future, even if the
Yes.
worst case scenario never came to pass.
Yes.
How does that influence? It feels like that is kind of an undertone to some of your thinking right now. Is that something you think about?
It is absolutely something I think about. First of all, my dad is a really wise guy. Having his advice kind of echoing in my ear throughout my life has been helpful. But I do think that that is exactly what is happening right now. And that it's sort of what you've talked about, where if institutionally we are nervous about the changes that we see, and therefore we kind of grip tighter to what has always worked and kind of bury our heads in the sand and pretend that we don't see these tides of change happening around us, I think those are the institutions that are going to not come out of this time of change in a positive place. And those of us who say, again, I'm equal parts exhilarated and terrified most days, and that's okay. And to just kind of be willing to sit with that and say, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. And yes, I'm making big changes. And that is nerve wracking because with big changes come consequences. And if I'm making a choice that's not a positive one or one that I feel like I've thought through and reasoned well, but it turns out to not be impactful in a positive way, that that's that stops with me. I mean, I own that responsibility. And so it is frightening. But at the same time, when I need a little boost, if I just go walk across campus and go to, grab a cup of coffee at the coffee shop and I see the students around me talking and studying and laughing and just being human in their own best way, I think this is why. This is the why I'm willing to be somewhat terrified every day.
I like that because I think what you're calling out is just to take the moment to acknowledge what's happening, but then you're also aware of being able to pick up on the little nuggets of positivity throughout your day that
Absolutely.
they remind you about what you're doing. But I think what we're getting to is also it's the second part of this topic, which is to just call out of what is happening in higher education. There are a lot of people that say that this is one of the toughest eras for higher ed, as we had mentioned in the first question there about your why. There are these pressures around financially, culturally, and competitively. And there are many institutions that are being forced to what we call kind of think in this and operate in a factory model, which is that they feel the pressure to think short term, to chase the numbers and all of that. How does that pressure show itself, though, from your perspective? You did mention that yourself and your CIO, you have like a monthly standing cadence. Do these pressures ever creep into that conversation, and do they weigh on some of the thinking that you have about leading the university forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely they creep into the equation, and that I think a big part of the balance that we're striking is looking at the financial pressures that every institution is facing and looking at what are we doing that is extraneous and doesn't have a good return on investment, whether that's a underperforming search order that we don't feel like we're getting the return that we want to from a particular lead generation source, or whether that's a process that involves paper forms getting moved from place to place around campus and lots of kind of lag time and frustration. And knowing that those things are things that we need to address and rein in and think about in a different way. And at the same time, efficiency is not the answer, right? So one of the things that probably people are tired of hearing me say, but I'm going to say it again because I really believe in it, and that is that systems should exist to increase human connection. And if the systems are existing for the sake of systems, they are in the way and you're doing it wrong. And so that is something that is a part of what we talk about is, are we doing the right things, but also are we doing them for the right reasons? And the right reasons are always about the people using them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to brush over what you just said, because
Okay.
a lot of your work is in systems
It is.
and efficiency. And you just said that is not the answer. And I don't want to brush over that. So how do you see this playing out, let's say in this factory model in the industry, where people are opting for that efficiency and disregarding the human connection piece. And you're here in the other camp saying that no, systems are there for the human. What do you see in the industry as people that are leaning towards this factory response of dig deep, dig down into the efficiency and into the systems and focus on that?
Well, I think what I'd say is, what is that efficiency allowing you to do? And to me, the whole point of the efficiency is that there are tasks that systems can do way better than people. Easier, simpler. They're online at 2:30 in the morning when a student has a question and I personally am sleeping, right? So there are things that systems can do. To me, the point is that the efficiency that you gain should not be just so that you can kind of crank more matter through the system itself. The point is, when you gain that efficiency, you recover time that you can invest slowly. And so I might have in the admissions cycle that, used to take, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but something that used to take somebody a lot of time to kind of do one at a time or manually. If we can automate that, and then we have a prospective student who walks in the door and they've got hours of questions or they've got kind of an underlying unspoken question that you have to you can't just come right out and ask that. So what are you really worried about, right? Like that you have to take the time to have the conversation to build trust, and then over time those pathways to connection open up. To me, that's what efficiency does, is it opens the way to the kind of human slowness that creates those really authentic connections. But I also think that is antithetical to the way our nation thinks, right? So we've kind of chased efficiency as a goal in and of itself. And I'm not just talking about higher ed here. I'm talking more culturally that we in the United States have done that. And that takes some really intentional and introspective thinking and choice to say, I'm going to reject that model. And I'm going to say that if I spend, I don't know, an hour and 20 minutes. So I hired a student research assistant this summer, and he is amazing. I adore him. But sometimes he just kind of shows up at lunchtime and we talk about all kinds of things that aren't related to his actual work. That's time really, really well spent, because I'm learning more about him. He's learning more about me. We are sharing our why for the work that we're doing. And then when we turn back to the work, I feel like it's deeper and more rich because of those connections that we've made. So I think that the efficiency is the immediate, obvious answer that institutions are looking at, and taking that deeper breath and saying, what is the efficiency about? And then choosing to deploy that extra time, not just, oh, I can do more and more and more and more, but maybe I can do less, but do it better.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in some ways have identified, you'd mentioned like the human connection piece. You've identified almost what does make higher education work really well, is that there's this core facet of human connection that exists there.
Mhm.
And how do you use efficiency as the means to that end, rather than flipping it upside down and almost having the efficiency be the end result, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think when you look at what's the purpose of an education, why are we doing this? And at Gettysburg, we don't I mean, obviously, you're building a knowledge base and a skill set, and you're preparing for your first job or you're preparing for graduate school. All of those things are important and valid. We talk here about a consequential education and about making connections between all of the disparate things that you do as an undergraduate and being able to articulate who that makes you as a person, and kind of for our students to find their why and figure out what do they want what do they want their lives to be about. That's a really important piece of a liberal education. And I could never work for an institution that I felt had lost sight of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Well, sir, I think you're teasing us a little bit because you're kind of it sounds like you have been doing things. You're working on things to create efficiencies, but as the means to this end of how are you actually building more of community and belonging with students in the environment of the campus? As myself and Lungi say, to kind of come out of the factory model, we really do believe that community is this response that will help the universities to thrive during this tough time and have the longevity. And you're echoing some of those same thoughts, but give us a little bit of like a sneak peek here. Like what are some of the things that you are doing? What are you building from a systems perspective that is building this belonging? It's really kind of amplifying the human connection of the
Hmm.
people that are on campus there at Gettysburg.
Yeah. So I would say from a recruitment and application and enrollment perspective, two things that we've done that I feel really proud of in the last year. We partnered with two firms that are specifically about creating community. And we did that because we felt that, first of all, that adults in students' lives are such an important part of their journey and the decision making process that they go through. And yet they're ancillary to a lot of the traditional recruitment process. And so we partnered with Campus ESP to create a parent and family community, which was so amazing watching the way people connected with that and the questions that parents were able to get answers to without even needing us to kind of jump on board. But then there's a kind of a handoff. So there's a current parent and family community that they then continue on when the students have we did have it for our current families last year, but I think that this first year class whose parents went through that during their application cycle have engaged even more with that parent and family community. So that was a piece that was really important to me, was to find a way to bring on these really key adults, often mom and dad, sometimes aunt, uncle, grandparents, other non-affiliated family members, right? But that was really important to me to have a space for them to feel welcome. And so that was the first step of the process. The second thing that we did last year in the spring was partnered with Zimi, which I'm sure you're familiar with Zimi. Um, and we wanted to do the same thing. We'd had such great success, and we were seeing this community of parents really gelling in a way that was exactly what I had hoped for when we started down that road. And so we wanted to do something similar for students. And I was really excited to see, even though we didn't start until right before we released our admission decisions, and we only invited students into the community who were going to be admitted to Gettysburg. So even though they didn't have the whole year of their college search to build that sense of community, it was really exciting to watch the conversations that they were having with each other, and then to see that spill over into their experience when they got here. And so, just to give you one example, we have a big accepted student open house every spring, as most places do. And at the end of that day, there's always a kind of just a social, a little reception at the end of the day. And there were two young men who were engaged in a very animated conversation and clearly had a shared history together. But we knew they were from geographically disparate places. So we knew that it's not like they were attending rival high schools and they met when their teams got together for baseball or something. Like it was not people that would have encountered each other. And so how did you guys meet? Oh, they met on Zeme. And it was really exciting to see that this digital conversation then was transposed into the real world in a way that when you talk about creating belonging, those two young men felt that because they had already done that for each other. So that was something that I was really excited to see. And this year, this class that is the students who are graduating from high school in 2026, we've had a Zimi community that started for them in their spring of their, or the fall of their senior year. And so they'll have that whole year together to really know each other before they even get here. And I think about it, I'm going to date myself, but when I went to college 1,000 years ago, it was before the internet. And maybe some people who are watching this will remember those. You would get a bound, like you'd send in a photograph and a little blurb about yourself, and then you would get a booklet of all the new first year students who were going to be your classmates. And we pored over those books and like flipped through them and looked at the people's pictures and what did they say about themselves and who do I think is going to be my friends, and oh, that guy is going to be a jerk or whatever it was. But like you had this sense of, I'm stepping into this new world. But now they can do that and talk with each other and find roommates and really feel like, okay, this is not a challenging transition because I already have found some of my people. And that's what it's about. We all need our people, right? Like no matter who we are in life, in any situation you go into, you're looking for somebody that you have that kind of connection with. And so, yeah, we're doing some things digitally to help students with that exact experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet that guy was a jerk too. I bet he
He
was.
probably was. Actually,
Yeah.
actually, I remember him. He was. No, okay.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's, I mean, everything you're doing now just sounds like, yeah, you are moving towards just creating that sense of belonging for these students. Like
Yeah.
everything that you're doing is you're choosing community, whether it's See Me or whether it's, other initiatives that you have, you're choosing community intentionally so that
Mhm.
these students do get that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to stay back, what was it, like 5 years ago when you were in college, when we were just talking about. So you talked about getting a sense of belonging, but also flipping through those books. Can you tell us, is there time, maybe just reflect a time where you felt a sense of belonging as a student coming into higher education, where you're like, wow, this is where I belong. Like what happened? What environment were you in?
Oh gosh, that's really taken me back. I think I was particularly fortunate because when I started college, I started in an honors program, which was very small and which had 3 seminars for the first 3 semesters. So those first 3 semesters, that seminar course was the same people. So you really, really got to know them and had that comfort level of, whether you liked them or not, they knew you and you knew them. I remember actually somewhere towards the end of my first semester, there was a guy who was in the class who was a pretty quiet individual. He didn't say a lot, but when he did talk, people really listened because whatever he was about to say was going to be really insightful. And we had devoted part of a class to talking about the experience of being at college and what was happening, particularly in that honors program. And of course, lots of us had very kind of lofty theories, and we met in this kind of scrungy old lounge with really beat up old furniture and mostly sat on the floor in a circle. And he happened to be drinking a Coke. And he was like, you know what? You guys are all missing the point. And he plopped his Coke can down in the middle of the circle. And he said, if you go around and we each talk about what we see, like my side might say Coca-Cola and your side might say Coke. And I can't see your side and you can't see mine, but by the time we get the whole way around, like we've seen all sides of it, and that's what we're doing with ideas. And that was the point at which I was like, this is what I want my life to be about. Yeah.
Wow. That just blew my mind right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Which is
that's a great
why I've
memory.
I've made a whole career in this type of institution because we do create those spaces for dialogue and for opposing viewpoints and for broadening our knowledge in that way. And honestly, to create the cognitive dissonance sometimes that allows growth to happen. I mean, that's part of the college experience that I want our students to have is I want them to sometime, like I want them to feel belonging, but I also want them to feel uncomfortable. I want them to feel, I want them to run into an idea that doesn't fit with their worldview. And then they have to really kind of unpack that and think about that and what changes in their worldview so that these things can assimilate. That space that's creating is how growth occurs. And so it's really important to me to be at a place that creates spaces for those things to happen.
Yeah. That's great, and that's a good way to start wrapping up what we're going to get to now, which is our quick fire questions for
Okay.
you. So they're going to be coming fast and hot, and
Okay.
yeah, you just let us know what's on your mind. The
Yeah.
first one is about something you care about a lot. So you've talked about your legacy. So what do
Mhm.
you want future students, staff to say about you and how you've led?
I want them to say that they felt seen and that I created space for them to try things and that I wasn't afraid of mistakes and that I gave them opportunities to grow.
Great. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you're well on your way with people
Thank you.
saying that about you. The second question is who's another leader that you admire or someone that you think we should bring onto this series because they themselves are building belonging in their own unique ways?
Oh gosh, there's so many people that I admire, but I'll tell you somebody that I think is doing really interesting work, and that is Alison Terciel from Siena. So definitely has a different outlook on what recruitment is about, and I think would be somebody that would be resonant with the work that you're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah. We're familiar with Alison. We actually follow some of her
Okay, well,
podcasts
so then you
and
can see
yeah.
why I said that.
Yeah, definitely agree. We'll hunt her down. We're actually going to hunt her down and try to get
Okay.
her on the series. And then the two more questions. One is you took the Factories to Communities challenge, which is a way for us just to help people to talk about the conversation.
Mhm.
What are your immediate thoughts about the challenge itself when you took it?
I think two things. One, I felt really challenged by the questions themselves. Like you asked me to think deeply in a way that and I mean, I'm a deep thinker, but you still asked me to go deeper than perhaps I had in the past. I loved the answers that I came up with when I looked at things through that lens. So that was the first part of it. The second part is just that I love that you have created something that helps people see where they are on the continuum, right? Because I don't feel like you've ever arrived, right? This is not work
Yep.
that's ever done. But I love that you've given people a mechanism to inquire about those things.
Awesome. And just for people to know, we didn't pay Sarah to say that. So appreciate
Oh,
that
no,
answer.
no, not at all.
Yeah. So and the last one before we wrap up, if all of higher education, every single person from student workers to presidents was to be quiet and pay attention to you, Sarah, and you had one phrase to say to all of them that they will all listen and take on during this time, what would you say to higher education?
Well, I know that you are readers of my Substack, so this is not going to be a surprise to you. But I would say that the most important choice that you make every day is to choose joy and to choose a life that supports you in choosing that joy.
Awesome. Well, I think on that note, everyone go subscribe to Sarah's Substack so you can keep listening. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
You're so welcome.
This was a great conversation. And in particular, you're bringing that perspective from the system side, the technology. You do have a strong perspective about that. So I think this will be a particularly interesting one for a lot of people. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
I was delighted to be back. Every time the three of us talk, I get excited about possibilities in the future. So thank you for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it.
Okay. See you next time. Thanks.
All right. Bye.